Welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Bariatric Nutrition Coach podcast. And after quite a few solo episodes, I have a very lovely client joining me today. So it's very exciting for me because I love getting on and chatting with people, and especially my lovely clients, because one of the reasons why I do my podcast is, yes, it's about education. It's about sharing great nutritional knowledge for people post-weight loss surgery, but it's also about sharing weight loss surgery voices, getting more voices out there, people sharing their experience, because bariatric surgery can be really isolating, especially if you're surrounded by people that don't quite understand what it's like. So it's wonderful for me to introduce the lovely Stacey. And I'm going to ask Stacey to say hello and introduce herself. So welcome, Stacey.
Thank you, Jane, for having me. I so appreciate the invitation to chat with you today. My name is Stacey, and I'm from the United States. I live outside of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. I've been married for 30 years to my husband. No children, but we do have two cute little fur babies that take up a lot of our time. Yeah. So that's a little bit about me. Yeah.
We've bonded over also having lots of trades around the house. You've moved, and while we've worked over the period of us working together, you've moved.
Absolutely. You have been instrumental in helping.
That. When I invited you, Stacey, to join me on the podcast, one, I was so thrilled when you said yes, because a lot of my clients go, oh, that would be great, but it's a bit, some people, it's just not something that they feel comfortable with. You said, that'll be full circle. And I'd love you to share what you meant by that, because I know what you mean by that, but I thought that was a really lovely thing to say.
Yes, it is a full circle moment. I first heard about you on the OSLP podcast, our Sleeved Life podcast with Kelly and Mel. And then I started investigating you on all the social media channels that you stated on their podcast. And then I started watching your podcast, and I thought, I really need to reach out to Jane because she seems to be the key that I need to help unlock the rest of my bariatric surgery journey.
Beautiful.
And now here I am that you invited me to.
Yeah, 9 months later.
No, I know, wonderful. Right? It's crazy. Yes, we've bonded quite a bit, and I've enjoyed every moment with you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So let's start. I mean, when I talk about sharing voices, I always, when I'm doing my podcast, I am aware people are at different stages of their journey. Some people are listening to the podcast and they're still deciding to have surgery. Some people have just had surgery. Some people are down the track. It's always nice just to come back to those reasons, that place where you decided to actually take the really brave step. I'd love you to share what led you, Stacey, to decide to venture into having the surgery and got you here today. So yeah, I'd love to hear.
Sure. I have struggled with being overweight my entire life, childhood, teenage, young adult, and now into my middle adult life. And I spent many decades doing the yo-yo dieting, trying various avenues of weight loss, including Weight Watchers, following different plans like keto or the Mediterranean diet or fasting, different versions of everything. I've had some success in the past. I was able to lose quite a bit of weight 2 or 3 other times before starting on the bariatric surgery option. I had regained a lot of weight that I had previously lost, and it was coming at that point in my life where I had experienced menopause, so I was postmenopausal, and no matter what I did, I could not stave off the weight gain. So I turned to medical weight loss at a local facility in my area, and we tried various medications and different weight plans and exercise options, none of which were successful. And at one point, I just decided that I would go to an information session that the same hospital was hosting on their surgical options for weight loss. And I never thought before that I would even be entertaining such what I considered a drastic option for myself. But at the same time, it's been a very, I want to say, life-saving option in the end. It's been challenging. I've had many challenges through it. Hasn't been easy, But I have to say, I'm almost 1 year post-op at this point. I'm about 11 months, a little couple days shy of 11 months post-op. And my whole life has changed because I invested in myself and this tool that I now have by having, I actually had the Roux-en-Y surgery, or gastric bypass, as a lot of people know that though. It wasn't taken lightly. I had a lot of convincing of my family and my husband specifically, and just taking a chance on myself and saying, how can I live my life more fully and healthier for the rest of my days?
Yeah, beautiful. So did you have your husband and your family were not supportive in the beginning? Did they think it was too drastic? What were they saying to you?
Yes, my husband specifically was just worried about me in general, having to go through with a surgical option versus the traditional calories in, calories out equation, which I have tried a lot of ways, but in just educating myself and immersing myself in the advantages of what bariatric surgery could afford me and my life, and including my time with him. It just was something that I needed to do. And then I encouraged him to research, and we had many discussions along the way during my pre-op surgical journey. So, I mean, he and I spent a lot of time together, a lot of deep conversations, making sure that we were both comfortable with it and the option of surgery that I chose. And in the end, he has supported me beautifully. I could not have asked for a more supportive husband in my own journey. So I'm very
That's
happy to say
wonderful.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's very common for people that they have family and partners around that don't necessarily know a lot about the surgery. It can be very much, yes, appear as a drastic step to take. And so it sounds, Stacey, like you didn't really know anyone. Did you know anyone before surgery that had bariatric surgery? Didn't sound like there's anyone in your kind of close circle of friends and family that had had surgery.
I didn't. There was no one in my immediate friend circle or family circle that had the surgery. It turns out that my brother, he's a first grade teacher, and he had a couple colleagues that actually had surgery. They actually had the vertical sleeve
Yep.
gastrectomy. So I spoke with one person in particular, and she was very open and willing to share her journey with me. And it wasn't all roses along the way for her, but it was absolutely a life-changing surgery. The tool itself just gave her a brand new lease on life for her and her young family. And she has been very supportive along my way too, through, even though I had Roux-en-Y versus sleeve, she's always been supportive and been there if I needed to talk to somebody about it, kind of like a buddy.
Beautiful, yeah. So, because I mean, when I talk to lots of people or get new clients, sometimes people in their life they've got quite a few people that have had
Yeah.
bariatric surgery. And that obviously helps with having that kind of, yes, connection, a bit more of an understanding. So that's a really big leap. But I'm so glad you did speak to somebody because it's really lovely. So it sounds like you really did research and it was very planned. How long did you think about it for? Can I ask? How long did you, from that point of going to that information evening to having surgery, what was the timeline?
I started thinking about it. So last February 2023, I went
Yeah,
to an information session in April. So there was quite a bit of just
yeah,
my own investigation before I really talked to anybody about it. And then, of course, the information session was pretty pivotal in my decision. And then meeting with the pre-op team and making sure that I met the requirements and going through all of that. I had my surgery on September 5th of 2023. So it was a good 6 months prior.
yeah, great. So we started working together when you were around 3 months post-surgery.
Yes.
Can you go back to that point? And you said at the beginning, like you wanted, was it a key? You wanted to use the tool that you had. And I'd love to hear the reasons why you, after listening to me on the podcast, and you thought, okay, I really want to investigate what Jane does. Like, what were the reasons why you decided to reach out?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So, coming out of surgery, I had a little hiccup and needed to go back in for another surgery. But then you start the post-op phase. And that post-op phase is going through all of those different stages of reintroducing food back into your life. And after you go through the liquid to the pureed to back to full food options, it's like I felt, at least with my program, that the support just ended. And I'm having a lot of emotions about my relationship with food. I'm having a lot of, obviously, because your hormones are affected by the surgery. So there's a lot of emotional, mental, not just physical aspects occurring right post-op. So you're trying to navigate going from like no food at all and then trying to figure out you can eat anything you want again. And it was my relationship with food that I believe needed the most work because, as I said before, I've been obese my whole life from almost like birth through pre-op. So it's just like something that doesn't go away because you have surgery.
Yeah.
And I was really hesitant and nervous about reintroducing certain food. And I wasn't sure how to do that. And post-operatively, my clinic wasn't really available. The nutritionist wasn't available. She was available 1 month post-op and then again 1 year post-op. So I'm like, well, what happens in between all this?
A lot
A
happens.
lot happens, right? It's not just getting through, it's not just getting through those first 5 stages of reintroducing food back in. It was absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
It was terrifying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I wanted advantage of the tool that this gave me. And so when I heard you on the other podcast, it was absolutely a godsend to me because I was like just floundering out there and I didn't want to make a mistake. I spent all this time and money and emotions. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I knew I needed a partner. I needed somebody else on my team to help me navigate this new territory with my new tool.
Yeah, beautiful. That 2 to 4 month mark post-surgery is, I've never seen it written anywhere, like from a nutritional dietetic kind of point. It's my experience of having worked with so many clients. It's a really common time for people to kind of, I call it hit a wall and go, now what? Because the dietary stages end and people say, now I'm on a normal diet. I'm on a, like, what do you have and how do you make eat how we would love you to eat, but also the habits that we want you to have to get them to keep that weight loss going, but also keep it. And that's where bariatric centres, and I say this all the time, and it's bariatric surgeons are wonderful because they do the surgery and we wouldn't be here without them talking about it. But bariatric surgery centres are set up by surgeons generally, and it's all about having surgery, getting the patients well, progressing, and then off you go. And there's so much to learn. Yes, and if you get stuck and you get really worried, Stacey, about, do I have this food and how much do I have and when do I have it? People can really have a very narrow diet and not many choices. And I know we worked on that together. And that is really restrictive and you're only going to stay there for so long because it's not a satisfying diet. You don't know how to get variety and good nutrition in and all of that. But it's also about laying the foundations, and I rattle on about this all the time. It's about foundations that set you up for So what you're talking to me about is very common. Okay, that real
turns out it is
really common. And I have a little snippet of your application form that I wanted to share.
Okay, please do.
Because what we're talking about now and going to lead us to really the topic or more topics that are so valuable and the challenges are so common. You put, I want to maximize my weight loss and enjoy delicious, nutritious food without guilt. I want a healthy relationship with food after a lifetime of diet culture and restrictive eating that has led to negative feelings towards certain food. Yes, you put that beautifully, and that's why I pulled it out. How do you feel when I read that back, that you put that in your application form?
It makes me a little choked up, really, because it's almost like it's the truth, right? I was at that point and I have this wonderful new tool, but yet I'm still faced with my old eating habits. And I know the crux of this success is going to lie in my relationship with food. And how do you dispel 30, 40 years of this relationship? It's a bad relationship, or is it a bad relationship? I don't know, right? We label things good and bad, and really food is just neutral. We attribute all these feelings onto it based on our life experiences. So it would be freedom, right? To be able to understand the value that food gives me nutritionally. And that it's also there for enjoyment, because let's face it, food is part of life celebrations and life, sad times. So it's integral to our lifestyle, obviously, but also like, how do I just simply enjoy it for the sake of enjoyment and not worry about, oh, now I have to go to the gym and take off that 150 calories that I just consumed over my budgeted amount, or like, it's not about punishment, it's about enjoying it. So and that's just one example of a negative mindset that I could go on and on about, really. But
Yeah.
it's just like, I just knew that having an ally to help with
Mm.
that, and of course break those, like I said, restrictive dieting mantras that we all kind of say to ourselves.
Yeah. In my boot camp, there's 4 key pillars or kind of domains of things that I work on with my clients, which are really, because they're very common. One is the what and how to eat. And that's what we do work on. And there's 2 others, but the other one is that I want to mention that really connects here for you is the trusting your body and food. So it's that finding balance. So it's not only after surgery, what and how to eat, and get variety, but trusting, and at the same time, it's trusting your body and trusting food and breaking those really default ways of thinking.
Yes.
And it takes time. So that fear, and really the first time I heard someone say this to me, I was quite shocked. But when people talk about post-surgery and introducing new foods and weight regain and all that, and using the word terrified, it's such strong emotion. But people that won't understand it if they haven't been through it. And when you have such a fear of doing maybe something that's not right for you, or introducing foods and all of that, you don't trust, it can be a really uncomfortable place. So I wanted to bring that quote, or what you put in the application form, because it really is that's something people say all the time, that how do I live post-weight loss surgery without feeling like I'm on a diet? How do I relax? And relax. And you're smiling. So talk to me about relaxing.
Well, you're weighing and measuring everything. You're eating, like, right out of the gate from surgery. You are making sure you're eating every 2 to 3 hours. You're taking your vitamins properly. You're getting enough liquid. You're getting used to this new tool. And the beauty of your plan, and there's 2 pillars that you're mentioning, your foundations helped me get to that part where I can trust my body. So they're so intimately, I don't want to say, they're so connected. They're so connected. And of course, after surgery, the way your body signals fullness and other cues, completely different than it was prior to surgery. So you have kind of like a new slate to kind of build these foundations on. So it is a reboot, so to speak, right? It is allowing you to take all these tools that you've used or learned in pre-op and moving forward, but how do you assemble that? And that's where your help just changed the game for me, right? It just changed the trajectory of my ability to understand what my body's telling me and trusting it. That was a hard one, right? Because my body, I can override it in a lot of ways in the past, and I can talk myself into more food or out of more food, or good food versus bad food, even though we're not talking about good food, bad food now, but my previous experience with food. So learning, like, okay, this is what your 3-to-1 bite ratios, protein to other, like, that's instrumental. Learning to understand, take your time, eating slowly, chew your food thoroughly, having a schedule, an eating schedule. Those were all majorly important to me in learning to listen to my body and understand when I'm satisfied, I'm not overstuffed, and I'm able to, like, be satisfied and nutritionally fueled to do what I need to do.
Yeah, beautiful. And trusting your body and learning the new hunger and fullness cues and learning to listen and understanding them definitely takes time. And I do a lot of work with clients around that, because so many years I've eaten, and we all eat, we distracted, we eat in front of TV, we're told to eat what's on our plate. We have so many different kind of forces that pull our focus externally, not internally. And it's that relearning to listen, but then also trusting what your body says.
And the signals do change, right? The signals, my fullness signals change from like day 1 after surgery to now 11 months post-op. They have significantly changed. So it's always paying attention, being in the present tense, making sure the rhythm of your body is you're honoring it and listening and just
Yeah.
trusting that, learning to trust it. It is a process. It's not easy. It doesn't happen overnight. And you're going to,
Yeah.
make false starts perhaps, but at the end of the day, you've taken the steps to do the surgery and there's going to be all these changes that's expected. And some of them are very big surprising kind of changes. But
Yes.
the beauty of our relationship is I had something new come up, a new feeling, a new sensation, and you were like, yes, this is normal. This is part of the process. So that was also a benefit of having you take me through
Thank
this
you.
process.
Yes. And that's why from having a dietitian appointment through your surgery centre at say 1 month to 1 year, we said there a lot happens in that time. There's so much change in the first. Yes. And I've spoken to so many people over the years, and they might get 3-4 months and they're saying, everything's great. I don't feel like chocolate, and chocolate was my thing. And I don't feel like this, and it's great. And I'm like, that's great. It's great that, yes, you're there now, but things will change. That we, as humans, we fall into that false sense of security, and we want this surgery to be the silver bullet or whatever the saying is, where it just fixes everything. And it's obviously, it's a huge tool. It's a reset. But the work that you do in that first year, if you can do the work and really, So
there's more work post-op than there was prior.
Yes.
It's no joke. It is no joke that I worked really hard prior. I mean, not just pre-op, but I mean, you work hard through pre-op to get to surgery. But even before that, with all the other diets and medication I've taken, but to be able to stand here and say, oh, this was easy. Oh, that is a complete fallacy. This is hard. It's not easy, but having a partner surely helps it.
Yeah. So we worked together for 8 months because we're just wrapping up your second boot camp now. You've shared a little bit about what you got out of the boot camp. Is there other things that you want to share that we worked on, or the benefits of getting working with me in the boot camp? Yeah, anything like that, Stacey?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the foundation pillars are just instrumental in helping me, and you pointing out, like you mentioned earlier, that we have moving house. That's been something we've had in common. And the stress of that, right? That could have sent me down a rabbit hole that I may not have been able to get myself out of. But not only having you there to listen to me, and then also you reminding me of the pillars that I need to do. And then, so the work is also in remembering that I have these skill sets that we've worked on, and to go back to them, no matter what's happening in my world or outside of it. I have these definitely strong foundations that I've worked really hard to get into my life, and I can fall into that. I can depend on them. Just
Beautiful.
like I can depend on myself, but having you to remind me when the stress was just too much, that's been great. That's been a lifesaver so many times. We've also talked, I've suffered a little bit from fatigue, and we've worked really hard to figure out the cause of that and slowly getting better with that, making sure my nutrients are right on target with that. So I appreciate all that. And also, there's one point when I went to see my surgeon 6 months post-op, and he told me that I was probably at the point where I was done losing weight. And if I was losing any more weight, it was just going to be by luck. And you were like, we're just going to put that aside for the moment. We're just going to forget he said that, because that was a big mental hurdle for me. And you worked with me very hard on that aspect to get over that statement. And I have subsequently continued to lose weight, albeit slowly, but slow and steady has been like the name of the game for me personally. And so those are just some of the benefits other than nutritional parts.
Beautiful. Thank you, Stacey. Look, it's been an absolute pleasure, and you've really worked so hard. Now, people think, well, it's great to work with somebody when life is quiet. Nothing's going to happen. And I say actually the opposite, because what we do if you are going through life stresses, which is really normal, is you learn how to identify when you're going off track, simplify your plan, but come back to foundations, come back to those key eating habits, key foundations, and really looking at it as self-care. Because reality is, if you're going to go off track at some point, because you're human and we're all human and everyone is. So yeah, you can have periods where the sun's shining, everything's wonderful, nothing's going to touch me. I've got everything under control. But things happen, job, family, whatever. There's a skill set or a toolbox of identifying when you're off, when it's all how to get back into your zone, nice at a pace that suits you and in a way that really suits you. And that is as opposed to going off track, throwing everything out the door, saying it's all not working, and then you're really you're off. Catching yourself and with compassion. I talk a lot about compassion. Okay, I'm off track. This has happened. I am human. I'm going to pick myself up. I'm going to go back to those key things that really work for me and help me feel satisfied and help me be in good health.
Oh, absolutely. I second all of that you just said. I mean, yeah, it is simply if everything's going along just fine, you can control it. I can control it. But when you have those ups and downs, I mean, that's also part of figuring things out is trusting yourself. Like, can you always remember this is a tool, right? And then everything else is your skill set that you're building, and you're just trying to amplify that tool to the best of your ability. Right. So yeah, foundationally, that's just been pivotal in my journey, of course. So yeah, I couldn't agree with you more than that. So.
Lovely. Well, it's been lovely chatting, Stacey. Thank you so much for coming on. You're so generous and I really appreciate it because I know so many people are going to relate to so many things that you talked about from pre-surgery and how things have been for you post-surgery. To wrap up, is there any advice you would give anyone to have considering surgery? They're on the fence and they think, what advice would you give them?
Advice that I would give somebody is trust the research that you're doing. Make sure that you educate yourself on your options, what types of surgery you could have. Make sure you're investing in a really good center and surgeon with a good reputation. Don't hesitate to go to more than one and see if there's a better fit for you out there. And I think just go for it. It's one of the best things I've ever done for myself, not just in terms of health, but in my overall happiness with life. And absolutely, you're worth it. You're worth taking that chance on.
Beautiful. Thank you. That's lovely advice. Beautiful. So thank you so much for your time.
Sounds good. No, I thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks so much, Stacey, for joining me. And thank you everyone for listening to my podcast. And I hope you found value in today's podcast. And I know you will because Stacey has shared such wonderful aspects to her journey. And I really appreciate her coming on the podcast. So thank you so much. And I really look forward to being back in your ears next week. Bye for now.